everybody. It's a rainy day here in Stoneville and thought it'd be a good day to maybe read y'all's book. This book is called The Most Beautiful or The Most Wonderful Doll in the World, and it's by Phyllis McGinley. The most wonderful doll in the world. There was once a little girl named Dulcie who found it hard to be satisfied with things as they are. Here's Dulcie. She was always wishing her flyaway hair could be ringlets, or that she lived on a farm instead of in a pretty village, or that she were tall and slim instead of plump and rosy round. Too much imagination, her mother used to say to her father. She'll get over it. But sometimes even they were made unhappy when Dulcie wished out loud for something bigger or better or more expensive than what she had. Take dolls, for instance. Dulcie was very fond of dolls. And since her mother and her father and her uncles and aunts and cousins and friends were very fond of Dulcie, they were forever buying dolls to add to her collection. By the time she was 6, going on 7, she had such a family of them as any other child would have been proud to own. There were the blue-eyed twins, Jack and Jill, with a crib and a bassinet to themselves. There were a big brown-eyed baby named Tosca and a white christening coat. There was Miss Abernathy, her special favorite, who wore a plaid jacket and skirt. There was a little girl doll with braids named Mary Alicia. There was Topsy the clown and the ballet dancer, a dainty creature simply called Ballerina. There were little dolls and big dolls and jointed dolls for the dollhouse, and a bride doll with a lace veil, and dolls who were never undressed but who merely stood on a shelf and looked charming. Dulcie liked them all and was quite a good mother to them, taking them out for airings and giving them medicine when they fell ill. But she was always wishing Mary Alicia's hair were yellow instead of brown, or that Tosca owned a lace slip like the doll of her best friend Marjorie. She was always dreaming that any gift she received was just a tiny bit different or a trifle better than it was. Do you see the ballerina doll and Tosca? Then one day Angela came into her life. It happened like this. On a blue, smoky afternoon in October, Dulcie was walking down the street on her way home from school. As she passed the home of Mrs. Primrose, that lady herself came to the door. Dulcie was glad to see her, for Miss Primrose was her particular friend. She was quite old, and all her children had grown up and gone away, but she lived in a house full of things exciting to look at and to listen to. She had a music box that played 12 tunes. She had shelves full of lead soldiers. She had a canary in a cage and a paperweight inside of which was a tiny church standing in the snow. When you shook the paperweight, snow fell thickly about the church from the sky. Dulcie, called her friend, come here a minute. I have a present for you. And there's her friend, Mrs. Primrose. Do you see the canary in the cage? In the house, Dulcie saw that the furniture was covered with sheets and that the canary was no longer in his cage. I'm going away for the winter, said Mrs. Primrose. While I was packing my things, I came across this. And taking a doll from the mantelpiece, she put it into Dulcie's arms. Then also from the mantel, she took a box tied with gold string and gave that to Dulcie too. This doll's name is Angela, Mrs. Primrose said, and she belonged to a child who once lived here. Now I want you to have her. In the box is her wardrobe. Oh, thank you, cried Dulcie. Thank you very much, Mrs. Primrose. And she remembered to add politely, I'm sorry you're going away. I'll be back, said Mrs. Primrose. Now shake the paperweight and run along, Angela. So Dulcie shook the snow into a blizzard about the church. Then she kissed Mrs. Primrose goodbye and hurried home with her gift. On her way, she stopped several times to peek at the clothes in the box. Angela's nice, she thought. But being Dulcie, she said to herself, only I wish she had black hair instead of yellow. Marjorie's new doll has hair as black as coal. Still, she skipped along happily until she reached the path that led to her home. Then she saw that something exciting was going on. It was leaf raking time, and the gardener had gathered up all the leaves from under the trees and around the hedges and upon the lawn and was preparing to set them afire. A bonfire, cried Dulcie, and propping Angela carelessly against one of the leaf piles which had not yet been gathered into the center mound, she hurried off to watch the flames. All afternoon she helped to burn those leaves and to rake scattered heaps of them into a blaze. It was only when her mother called her to come in to wash her hands for supper that Dulcie suddenly remembered about Angela. And when she ran to the spot where she was sure the doll was sitting, no Angela was to be found, nor was the box anywhere in sight. Dulcie searched and searched. Her mother came out to help her. Even though the gardener said he was certain that Angela must have been raked into the bonfire, he joined into the hunt too until it was too dark to look any longer. They had to finally admit that Angela had disappeared. Poor Dulcie. Although there was chicken and ice cream for supper, she could scarcely eat a bite. Now that Angela was lost, she realized what a treasure it was that Mrs. Primrose had given her. Tell me about Angela, said Dulcie's mother, trying to console her. Perhaps we can find a doll almost like her. She was beautiful, sobbed Dulcie. She had yellow hair and eyes that opened and closed in a blue dress with a pinafore. Dolls with yellow hair and eyes that open and close in blue dresses with pinafores shouldn't be too hard to find, Dulcie's mother said. When I'm downtown, I'll buy you another. There'll never be another, Angela, cried Dulcie. Across her mind floated the picture of the doll as if she would have looked in one of those costumes from the box tied with gold string. Surely Angela would have been finer than any doll she owned. She wore patent leather shoes, real patent leather shoes with heels, and she could say Mama and Papa and sing Rock-a-Bye Baby. Wow, what a remarkable doll she must have been, exclaimed Dulcie's mother. I doubt if I could find another like that. I lost my doll, Dulcie told her father when he came home late from the office. Her name was Angela, and she had yellow hair and eyes that opened and closed, and she wore patent leather shoes with heels, and she could say Mama and Papa and sing Rock-a-Bye Baby. Never mind, Dulcie, said her father. I'll get you a doll to take her place. Oh, no, mourned Dulcie, who had been thinking and thinking about the splendors the bonfire had taken from her. There'll never be another Angela. She was the most wonderful doll in the world. She could sing Rock-a-Bye Baby and wave her hand and take steps. Oh, goodness gracious, said Dulcie's father. She must have been one of those old clockwork dolls. I don't think they are made any longer. And sure enough, although he looked in all the shops the next afternoon, he couldn't find a doll like Angela. Every day when Dulcie came home from school, she searched beneath the hedges and under the trees, hoping that Angela had somehow been overlooked. But fresh leaves kept floating down from the maples and covering up the raked lawns, and then the rains came and then the snow, and Angela was finally given up for good. But the more Dulcie thought about her, the more marvel she remembered. Did you know I lost my doll? She asked her teacher at school. No, Dulcie, answered her teacher. I hadn't heard. Tell me about her. She was the most wonderful doll in the world, Dulcie said eagerly. Her name was Angela, and she had real yellow hair and eyes that opened and closed. And she said Mama and Papa and sang Rockabye Baby. She wore patent leather shoes with heels, and she could wave her hand and take steps. Maybe you'll find one like her, said the teacher. There'll never be another Angela, Dulcie sighed, and she closed her eyes a moment and thought about it. She had a purse and a handkerchief in it and little tiny leather gloves. Dear me, remarked the teacher, what an unusual doll she must have been. Dulcie said sadly, yes, she was. And when she got home that night, she looked at her doll family with great dissatisfaction indeed. Angela was so much nicer than you, she said to Mrs. Abernathy crossly, and taking her out of the chair, she shut her away in a cupboard. Aunt Tabitha came to visit Dulcie's parents soon after that. Aunt Tabby was nearly Dulcie's favorite relative. She was young and gay and knew many interesting stories, and she always carried a present in her traveling bag for Dulcie. This time the present turned out to be a doll, a pretty one dressed like a skater. But Dulcie burst into tears when Aunt Tabby handed it to her. Whatever's the matter with the child? Cried Aunt Tabby. I had a doll named Angela and I lost her, wept Dulcie. She was the most wonderful doll in the world. She had real yellow hair, eyes that opened and closed, and she could say Mama and Papa and sing Rockabye Baby. She wore patent leather shoes with heels. She could wave her hand and take steps. She had a purse with a handkerchief in it and little tiny leather gloves. But look, this doll has a skating costume, Aunt Tabby coaxed. Dulcie stopped and thought about that for a time. So did Angela, she cried. And she had skates, too, that you could take off and put on. So there's the skating doll that her aunt tried to give her. And when you wound her up, she skated. Oh, dear me, said Aunt Tabitha. I don't know where you could ever find another doll like that. You'll just have to get along with this one.